Hi everyone, my name is Koravich from SCBX. It's my pleasure to moderate this session with Idan, CTO of Agoda. So today we are going to talk about something every company is dealing with, not just building AI demos, but actually scaling agentic AI inside business. So we have 30 minutes to achieve this. So Idan, thank you so much for being here. So before starting, please briefly introduce yourself, about you, and also Agoda as well.
So hi, Koravich, and thank you for having me today. So my name is Idan Zalzberg, and I've been at Agoda for 12 years now, currently acting as the CTO. For anyone doesn't know, Agoda is one of the leading OTAs in the world, specifically in Asia. But we like to think of ourselves like as a tech company that happens to do travel. So that we definitely have a large tech team that is very invested in everything that requires to run a business as ourselves. And definitely AI has been a big thing on our plate. To be honest, like AI as a whole obviously existed before GenAI, and we have been doing that for quite a while. But since GenAI came in, we definitely jumped on that opportunity and invested a lot in it. So I'm very excited to be today and share some of it.
Wow, that sounds interesting. So let's move to the next question. Question one. So I heard that you, as Agoda, you developed some kind of the AI, internal AI tools to use in the Agoda. So can you explain a little bit about the AI actually used inside the Agoda today, internally and in terms of the product as well?
Yes, definitely. So yes, as of today, we have, I think, more than 200 use cases in production that we home built GenAI solutions. And it's really across the whole spectrum. So we did start very strongly on the more internal tools that focus on improving productivity, reducing the manual work of developers, but everyone in the company actually. So even people department, legal department. So really make sure that everyone gets empowered by this new technology. And we had this kind of framework. We called it Empower, Enhance, Evolve. So the first one was to empower our employees and focus on the internal things. The second part was the enhancement. And that was to look where can we use AI today in our product suite in a way that makes it better, but not materially different, conceptually not different. So that's, for example, is in customer support, right? So we already had a chat interface and tooling on the app, and we also had our agents. But then we asked, how can GenAI help that, make that much better? So today, essentially our customer support bot is agentic by itself, uses natural language. You can talk to it and understand much better that you are getting the support that you are looking for. But also on the agent side, we built a lot of tools for the agents themselves to make them more productive, more efficient. Things like summarizing cases or quick drafting of emails or translations. So again, the point is to take things that were maybe manual and cumbersome and make them more efficient so people can actually focus on what matters. And then now, finally, like almost a year ago, I would say, we started really looking into the last part of this framework, which is the evolution. How do we change what an OTA is? How do we really build AI into our product in a way that changes what people think an OTA responsibility is? And the idea is to have kind of like this concept of an AI concierge or agent or assistant, whatever you want to call it, that actually covers your travel needs end to end from the start, from the inspiration until you're back safe home. And that's a very long journey that we started about a year ago. I'm very excited about it. So we have already some products in that line, but that's I think is more the future looking part of it.
Wow, that sounds great. You mentioned a lot of evolution, right? So let's move to the next question about the evolution through multi-agent. So in terms of the Agoda evolution, so from the single task bot to coordinated to multi-agent like Swarm that collaborate to like plan trips, optimize pricing, and complete booking end to end. So can you tell me more the detail for the Agoda evolution?
For sure. And I think our evolution was quite aligned with the rest of the world, I would say. And we give it like nice names and call everything like, oh, the new revolution, the new agentic and all these things. But honestly, it's just steps, and we give them nice names to make it clear to people. But honestly, it's just step by step as we were learning and evolving with this technology. So as you said, it started with a single prompt. You do something with a single prompt, you put some data in and you hope the result comes out. Then you find out that you don't have enough like context and you don't have enough input for that prompt. That came out RAG, which means the ability to retrieve information for the context and then kind of enrich your prompt. So then we had a lot of workflows that look like I'm starting some tasks. So first of all, I'm going to collect the information. I'm going to put it all together in one big prompt and then call it. But still, it was limited to one prompt, one call, and this is how things worked. And it had a lot of downside, and there was a lot of tasks that it couldn't handle well. Sometimes it didn't bring the right context. Sometimes it just hallucinated because it didn't have enough, or sometimes it has too much context. It was tricky. We also find out that agents need more than just information and text input and output. Sometimes they want to decide to call an API, they want to decide to make some action. And then the concept of function calling that started, I believe, from OpenAI, and that evolved over time to what we call today the MCP, the tools, which means I give the LLM the choice to actually call different functions and do things on its own. And then I think the last step of evolution that we see today is we realize that these agents are actually need more than one prompt. They need some kind of a loop. You need to feed it back, like us humans. When we do something, we need that feedback. We need to see if it worked or didn't work. We need to see why, and then we can correct ourselves. And we see that AI behaves quite the same. So we started to build those agents that basically say, okay, I'll put some text, I'll call some tool, and then I see what comes out, and then I decide my next step and my next step and my next step. And these are what we call agents. And I think now the kind of like the frontier of where we are is that we have these agents and we realize we can't give one agent all the responsibility because it becomes too much complex, too many tools to call, too much context, it gets confused, it gets derailed. And I think where we are today is where we understand we need to build multiple agents, which is really analog to how humans work, right? We have experts in every field, they have actions they can do, they have knowledge they have, but they need each other to make things happen in the bigger. So we see the same in AI. We need different agents that are experts in different things, and they need to hand off things to each other in order to really achieve a task. The upside of this is that then you can focus the responsibility of every agent to do just one task really well, and you're able to optimize and make sure that it actually does that task well. And I think that the word, if one word that needs, I would like anyone to take away from today is evaluation. The biggest issue by far with GenAI, building successful GenAI applications is the evaluation problem. How do I know that my agent is really good at the job? And that I think is something, there's a lot of research, a lot of progress, but it's not a solved problem.
That sounds great. It's similar like as a SCBX group did. We found that sometimes single agent couldn't achieve some specific and complex tasks. So sometimes we need to like build a multi-agent collaboration to solve the complex system. Okay, yes. So you mentioned about evaluation, right? So let's move to the next question. So, but this question is similar. Like, let's imagine that AI startup trying to selling some service to the Agoda, and AI startup trying to pitching the idea. So what kind of the evaluation metrics for you to consider? So for example, like latency budget, evaluation data sets, or maybe privacy posture. What is your opinion for this? Yeah.
So yeah, there's no easy answer, right? It's really like all of the above. But I think it depends per case. So it's not like everything has to be perfect every time, because that's not realistic, right? So what's important is, and that we sometimes forget with AI because we're so excited about the technology, the important thing is to focus on the problem you're trying to solve. You're not just using AI for the case of using AI. If you do, you will fail. You have to ask yourself, what am I trying to improve? Who am I going to impact? What problem am I solving for that person or for that group of people or whatever? What am I trying to achieve? Once you know how to set your OKR. I'll give you one example. If I need to use AI for something that does autocomplete. So example, our support agents, I give them autocomplete for their messages so they are faster in writing those messages. Imagine you have to wait 10 seconds for the autocomplete to finish. Now that's useless because the agent can say, I can just finish the sentence myself faster. What? You didn't give me any value. On the other hand, if I have now an agent that runs completely in the background and does things like, code work, running PRs, or even summarizing analytical results. Nobody's holding their breaths waiting for that to finish. So that can happen for an hour. I don't care. So it's really about setting the requirements that meet your needs. If we talk about cost, I think it's really also a question of how much value you are getting. It's essentially a question of ROI. Nobody wants to lose money by using AI. So if there's no value, if nobody's gaining and you're paying more, there's really not much value to it. But there are cases where you're willing to spend a lot of money on AI if the value is that big. And what's really interesting with AI, that sometimes it is. There are a lot of things that we spend a lot of time on, manual works or whatever, that are like huge potentials. And if the AI can give us the quality of output, then it's a huge win. And even if it's a bit expensive, it's worth it. So for example, if we talk about quality, if you give me 90% quality, maybe that's not really useful for me because I still need to cover everything. So what did I gain from that? But in that scenario, maybe I'm willing to pay you 10 times more to get 99.9 quality, right? And then I know that it's worth it for me because I don't need all these protections on top of it.
Okay, that sounds great, like cost, quality. Okay, so let's move to the next question for enterprise POC expectations. So let's imagine about what do you expect in the enterprise POC for AI toolings like time to value, quality, deltas, reliability, etc. And what number should founder work invest?
Yes, great. So look, I think that there's some basics of like uptime and so forth. Like a tool that's not working, like okay, that's an easy no, right? So there's a basic expectation of high uptime, 99.99 to say, like if I have to spend time now, every time if I'm starting to rely on this new framework, new workflow, and every time it's down, I'm like, what do I do now, right? So it does have to have this kind of stuff are easy to say that are very important. Consistency is really important. So whatever you guarantee me, the problem, and that happens a lot with AI because it's unpredictable software eventually. If you show me like in the demo, the best possible use case, it's like, wow. But in reality, if that's like what I get 40, 50, 60% of the time, then it's completely, in most cases, it will be completely useless because there's a lot of cost to getting it wrong. So when you as AI get it wrong, then I have to identify that. I have to say, wait, no, that's not true. I have to be very doubtful. So it's really, usually we would prefer to see more focus on the quality than anything else to start. Because anything else we believe we can optimize. But if we are to rely on this, then we need to make sure that like the consistency of the result to whatever OKR we are looking at is very high.
Okay, that's great. So when you mention on that way, I heard that Agoda is an experimentation culture. So I just want to ask for, let's imagine about 1,000 of experiments. So when you have to run 1,000 of experiments concurrently, what is the smallest viable experimentation stack to shift AI to run features safely without analysis paralysis, in your opinion?
Yes. So I think you're touching a great point about the analysis paralysis here, because it's very easy to fall into this trap. I think it's very critical to define these OKRs that you have, that you are willing to commit on. And the way we manage this problem is that we say you need to have one OKR, but you can have many SLAs. So for example, if I'm saying like I'm optimizing for the percentage of positive feedback, I want to make sure that people love my suggestions, right? So I want to see above 90% positive feedback on my suggestions. But I also have an SLA that I don't get more than 2% hallucinations and my response time is within 10 seconds. So like, don't try to optimize all of the above. Keep the hallucination under this line, keep the latency under this line, but the one that you should keep fighting for, let's say in this example, is the positive feedback. So I think choosing what you are maximizing and what you just want to keep under some kind of known number, I think is important. Now, sometimes even that is kind of easier to say than do. And people have a tendency to, what do you mean positive feedback? Does it mean that you answer the question, or does it mean that you partially answer the question? What if you gave a wrong answer, but people still gave it a plus? What if somebody asked a question that is completely unrelated? Should we try to answer unrelated questions that have nothing to do with our product just to get more positive feedback? So it creates a lot of these good questions, and I think it's important to kind of not have that temptation to make it too complex. So keep it simple, even if it means that some noise gets in there. It's better than going into having like 20 different metrics, and then some of them are green, some of them are red, you don't know what to do. Is it bad or good? Because what's going to happen, and this is the other thing I mentioned, evaluation. It's very important to have an offline evaluation stack. Because the problem, again, with GenAI, it's unpredictable software. Every change you do, you change one word in one prompt, you have no idea what it will do. Nobody can tell you exactly what it will do. You have to test. So in order to be able to test, first of all, it's important to get an offline evaluation stack, meaning you have some way to kind of run a simulation. This is, by the way, a very hard problem, definitely in multi-agent environments, to run a simulation of how this change is going to impact the performance of the agent. So some products have kind of a golden set, and they run the golden set of like examples and see how the bot reacts, and then they know if it's good or bad. But again, without humans actually saying positive feedback, sometimes it's hard. So it's a bit tricky how to maintain that evaluation without running it in real time. And definitely after you run offline, you definitely have to have the real time, because just relying on LLM to kind of judge itself, and we use LLM as a judge and other techniques like that, eventually you need to make sure that it's tested with the real people. And again, that's why having a very clear decision of what the metrics are is extremely important.
So that sounds great thing. And when you mention about tech stack, so I have like a question about, let's imagine about we have like a LM model or some services. So when you're building some services, how can you decide it? Okay, so this project we need to use external API, or this one we should self-hosted model. So what is your opinion? What kind of criteria that, okay, we should consider API or self-hosted model?
Yeah, good. So this one, for once, I will make this easy. The times where we actually consider internally hosted models in general are never. We almost never want to use internal models, again, unless it's not really LLM. Sometimes for some kind of like diffusion models for images that are very specific, we can use. If we talk about actually running like one of these open source LLMs, self-hosted, I definitely think it's wrong, and it's a waste of time for commercial companies to invest in that. It's very expensive to set up, very hard to change, and models still change very frequently. So even if today and you spend a lot of money, you buy, you rent the hardware, you run your model, and you've made it work, and then the next week there's some update from OpenAI or Google or Anthropic, and now how do you know you're not left, behind? Now you have to do and hope that some new open source model, assuming you're not building a model from scratch yourself, which is, investment of hundreds of millions of dollars, then at least, then now you're waiting, essentially you're stuck. You cannot use the best in the market. To be honest, this whole GenAI API market in itself is highly competitive. We are consumers of that, and we benefit from that competition. So to now say like, no, even though we know that, OpenAI and the others are literally spending money, to make us use their product because they're trying to get the best product out there, like not to take advantage of that, for me, just wrong. There is enough work to be had on just how we use this GenAI, everything we spoke about, evaluation, multi-agent. That for me is enough innovation and work for us, and I really don't see the point of also on top of it having to run our own models. I think it will just slow us down, and it will increase the cost considerably. For me, using the APIs give me access to the best technology in the world at any moment in time in the day that it's released, and that's our focus.
Okay, I see on your point. So, okay, so when we mention about API and self-hosted, sometimes we need to consider about the latency and quality of, right? Because when we deploy, sometimes API is good, sometimes self-hosted is reduce the cost. So let's move into the question, the next question. We just want to focus about latency and quality. Sometimes in the production level, we need to focus on the latency. Sometimes we need to focus on the quality. So in your opinion, what have you learned about latency versus quality trade-off in production that a startup should bake into SLO from day one?
Sure. So I think it's a great point, and it's definitely something that is tricky in GenAI. And I think we touched on this like previously a little when we talked about async agents are not that sensitive, when inline agents like auto completions need to be very fast. So definitely need to understand your requirements because different products have different requirements. But even with that, what I would recommend is to start with high quality, because that shows you what's possible. And we don't know. When we start and think that maybe AI can do it, we first need to verify that AI in general, even without latency concerns, can do the job we need it to do. And then we can optimize the latency from there. Now, to optimize the latency, there's a lot you can do. You can, first of all, some providers just allow you to pay more and get faster responses, like predicted latency and such from all the big providers. Secondly, you can do it. You can use smaller models. You can optimize the context by choosing what's there and what's not. But really, the nice thing, if you start from high quality, it allows you to create that baseline evaluation. So I know that's the best I can do, putting latency inside, and then everything else, I know what I'm paying for. So if I know I can get the true or false kind of true detection to be 99%, I know it's possible. Now it's a question for me how much I want to take it backwards until I meet whatever latency SLA I want to meet. But at least I know where I'm starting from, and I create the right benchmark to test again against my kind of faster options.
Okay. So when we mention about quality, maybe cost some time. So I have a pop-up question like the metrics. So let's think about, okay, so we need to conduct some AI projects and we need to consult. So for example, like, okay, so we build the AI project, let's say we have only 12 months. So if you need to give some suggestions, so what kind of the 3 metrics dashboard that any AI product team should looking for to make sure that, okay, this project can move forward?
Yes. And again, it's a little hard to generalize because, different problems require different like metrics and solutions. It's not all one. Just because it's using AI doesn't mean it's all the same. I would say usually, or many cases, AI is used by people. So the adoption and the fact that people repeat to the product often is like a good indication that you're doing something right. The other thing is the actual micro feedback, which is kind of like when you put everything, you give it like a feedback button and see how people react to it. Like we talked a little about this. And then there's the macro feedback where people like fill surveys and say like how much they like, how much time it saves them, and so forth. In many cases, you do have a notion of like, did I complete a task? Definitely, when we talk about more asynchronous agents, like was this task successfully done, and how many tasks were successfully done? So I think in many cases, you do have that in some way. Or if I'm suggesting code, was it take? If I'm suggesting a summary, was it used or was it updated? So this kind of like a quality metric of actually making an impact, I think can be very important.
Okay, that sounds great. So right now, let's move into the question about like the high level. So let's imagine about the startup company. Sometime the startup company trying to utilize any resources, even like a human resource. So in your opinion, when the manager should stop coding and looking to the bigger picture?
Yeah, so that's a very passionate topic for me, and I think very interesting in the world right now, as we see a lot of the big companies are asking themselves like, what do we do with the middle management, and maybe we don't need so much. And I saw some articles about how they disconnect from the technology when they move to management, and then they're not as effective. So I think that's something that's really close to my heart as a topic, and something we've been talking a lot in Agoda and doing a lot about. So I wouldn't say that it's not about managers need to code because we need to force them to code or because that's how they get work done. It's about what happens, I think, when managers start to code or disconnect from technology. That's the problem. So see, like technology keeps changing. So and it's just getting faster and faster. The minute you stop kind of having your hands in it, then now you're not understanding more how the work done by your team is actually being done. You don't understand their problems. You don't understand the solutions. And over time, you become less and less effective. It's also kind of like some of that mutual respect and trust. Eventually, developers are very professional people and they appreciate their craft. So if you as a manager don't understand and they don't feel like you can have a conversation with them at their level, you don't have to be the best in the team, but at least like interested in the craft itself, which is, the development work, they will have a hard time to follow your lead. And it's all about, leading by example, because even if you do small contributions, but in your small contribution, you show how you do proper testing, you show how you do proper documentation, you show them how it's done, then I think that can be way more effective than just saying, oh, everybody make sure you test your code, everybody make sure you document. The way that they see your work as an example of how you think work should be done is another tool for you as a manager to kind of educate and help your team grow. So there's a lot of benefits. I have actually a long list. That's just the top of it. But it's something that I do feel strongly about. Again, managers sometimes have different ways to achieve. Eventually, the manager job is not to code. The manager job is to have a successful team. My personal opinion is that by keeping your hands-on approach, you will have much more tools to help your team succeed. So I think that's just my opinion, but there's definitely other people that do it in a different way and can be very successful.
Okay, so maybe it depends on the goals that we are going to move forward. Okay, so for the previous question, you mentioned about building the prompt, right? I mean, use prompt into the single task for one agent and move into the multi-agent collaboration, right? So sometimes I think we encounter some kind of the prompt and configuration drift. So let's imagine about okay, we have 1,000 of the microservices in your application. So what is the best practice for preventing about prompt or configuration drift across 1,000 of the microservices?
Yeah, I think like in some way, the fact that you have many services defined is actually can be helpful, because then the responsibility of every service is more limited and defined. So when you try to do evaluation, you're not saying like I'm an agent that does complete travel management, suggestion, build itinerary, search, do. It's a lot. If you say like I'm about searching for flights and I'm an agent for checking property details or hotel details and answering questions about the property, if you actually limit the scope of every service, you find yourself in a more testable kind of environment that allows you to make sure that each one of these agents do their job well. It does create a problem that like when you try to sync across many agents, it can become kind of confusing even for the developer. Like, how did he get to that? Like, who told you, you're looking at the agent and they're like, who told you that? So what we see today is there is a growth in observability products, and I think it's important to integrate with a good observability product or build one that can actually show you, definitely when it's GenAI interactions, that when services are not being kind of like easy to predict, then shows you what happened across a whole conversation. So like, okay, the main agent talked to this agent, got back this answer, then they decided to talk to that agent and got this, and see the whole story end to end in a very clear way for the developer to be able to optimize and understand where are the downfalls of the current setup.
Okay, I think it's clear for me as well. So let's move to the last question. So in one of your previous interviews, you call the data like a booby trap, right? So what is the most common trap that you still see in the proxy metrics, like survivorship bias or uncalibrated offline, etc.?
Yeah. So I think we see all of them, and that's the problem. And I think if the mindset is like whatever data we have, that's what we need to make a decision on, and that still means the data is correct. That's the problem. There's a famous quote: "If you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything." So I think you need to be very careful of that. Definitely, we saw a lot of cases. There's just not enough data, and you just have to be honest with yourself. And that's why I think like we try to not use data-driven as a term anymore, but call it science-driven. So data is a tool, and maybe you have a lot of data sometimes, maybe you don't. You cannot just excuse bad decisions just because like you had very small data, inconclusive, but you said that's the data I have, so I have to trust the data. We don't trust the data. We trust the scientific method. And that tells us if the data can tell us something very strongly or not. And if it's not, it's okay. Then make a decision based on common sense or use some other tools. It's fine. But be honest with yourself. when you don't have the data to actually make a decision, do it in the way that you can trust the process.
Okay, I think it's clear for me as well. So maybe we can look into data AI as a tool. So we should set like the goals as like to move forward. So trying to utilize every tools as much as we can. I think I totally agree with that. So
Indeed.
Idan, thank you so much for this session. This has been incredibly valuable for us and for the audience. So thank you for sharing the real operation side, not just the vision.
For having me.
Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.